Well, I hope you had a good breakfast this morning and you're feeling very energetic because this gospel is 45 verses long. Now, a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary is the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus, "Lord, he whom you love is ill." But when Jesus heard it, he said, "This illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it." Accordingly, though Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, after having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer where he was. Then, after this, he said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now trying to stone you, and are you going there again?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk during the day do not stumble, because they see the light of this world. But those who walk at night stumble, because the light is not in them." After saying this, he told them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to awaken him." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he's fallen asleep, he'll be all right." Jesus, however, had been speaking about his death, but they thought he was referring merely to sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. For your sake, I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Thomas, who is called the twin, said to his disciples, "Let us go also, that we may die with him." When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he'll rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there's a stench because he's been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I know that you always heard me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he said this, he cried out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him. Let us pray. O Lord, may your words only be spoken and your words only heard, and we ask this all for your love's precious sake. Amen. Please be seated. Kids Chapel with the lovely Miss Ann, with Aunt Mary. Yay! Who's our third? Miriam? All right. Great team today, great team today. Well, I expect that a great many of you have heard of an apocalyptic, horrific TV drama called The Walking Dead. It's the #1 most watched TV show on basic cable that there has ever been. And it's the story of a world overrun by zombies and the people who are trying to navigate that world. It might be called a study in full catastrophe living, because they face one catastrophe after the other. And as they do so, they suffer this string of great losses, this string of devastating losses. And the interesting thing is, as they suffer these losses, the forces around them conspire to take away their humanity, to make them less than human themselves, so that in essence, the characters that we've come to know and care about, they themselves become the walking dead. That's where the social commentary comes in. That's part of what makes the show so interesting. The Walking Dead doesn't primarily refer to these post-apocalyptic zombies. It refers to the people who are struggling and often losing to hold on to their humanity. Well, in this morning's Old Testament reading, which we did not read today because I figured 45 verses from John was probably enough, but I'd encourage you to go back and read that reading from Ezekiel. It's the familiar story of the valley of dry bones, and the Spirit of God comes upon those bones and they live again. When Ezekiel sees this prophecy, experiences this prophecy, the nation of Israel is also experiencing full catastrophe living. They too are experiencing one catastrophe after another. And so the king of Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar, has come down from the north. He has conquered Jerusalem. He's deported the vast majority of the Jews living there back to Babylon so that they all go into exile and are separated from the land that they call their home. While they're grieving there, he takes the king of Jerusalem, he deports him to Babylon also and puts a puppet king in his place. But this puppet king proves to be treacherous and deceitful. And so Babylon descends on Jerusalem again, and this time they butcher all the Jews that are remaining there, slaughter them, and destroy the temple completely. Nothing left of Israel, the state, nothing left of the temple, God's presence there. The bodies and bones of their beloved brothers and sisters strewn throughout the land. And it feels like one catastrophe after another. And they too feel like living corpses. They too feel like the walking dead. And it's in this situation that the question is posed, that it's in this situation that Ezekiel sees this valley of dry bones, these desiccated corpses. And the question comes to him, Son of man, or mortal, can these bones live? And the question is clearly not just about the bones he's seeing in this prophetic vision, but it's also about the children of Israel. Can they live again? Is there any reason for them to be hopeful? Is there any future at all before them? And that brings us to today, to your life and to my life. Because we too live in a world that might often be described as full catastrophe living. And while the catastrophes that we face may vary in severity, some of us are facing extremely challenging things. But all of us face losses, dilemmas, sorrows, tragedies. All of us. All of us know that even if we're not facing any great big thing, we know the aggregate weight of the 1,000 little things that aren't the way they should be, we want them to be. We know the weight of how those things add up and weigh us down and burden us. We know what it is to live in a world where nothing is permanent. The things that we might think are permanent, things that we were counting on, all of them are subject to change. And all of them can be taken away from us, and often are. And so because our experience of life can also be the experience of full catastrophe living, we can come to that place where we feel just like what is described in Ezekiel's vision. We too can feel cut off, separated. The bones aren't in whole skeletons. They're strewn all about the land. They're separated one from each other. And we too can feel separated from the people we love. We can feel like there's something different about us, like people don't really understand us, or even like we're imposters. Other people are living this life, but we feel like we're not really. We're just kind of playing at it. If people really knew us, they'd know that we were imposters. And so because we feel cut off, because we feel so different, we can feel very isolated. We can feel very lonely. We can feel afraid. We can also feel dry. We can come to dry places in our lives. We can come to those places in our lives where we just feel like we're in a dry and weary land where there is no water. Our heart, our soul, it longs for something. But whatever it is it longs for, we just can't quite find. And so we come to these dry places in our lives. And we can come to these places where we feel cast off. People put on a pretty good show of it, but when it comes right down to it, nobody really cares. Not really that important to anybody. 10 years after I'm gone, who will even remember me? Old what's his name? And so we can feel like we're cast off. And so the question then comes to us, given all that we've experienced, our failures and our shortcomings, our tragedies and betrayals, the curveballs and changes that life has thrown at us, can these bones live? In a world where so many people are the walking dead, can we become the waking dead? And is there hope for us? And what does our future like? And can life be everything that we once hoped it would be, and maybe even more? Well, as I said, it's in this situation that the prophecy comes to Ezekiel. He hears this question, mortal, can these bones live? And of course, if Ezekiel answers that question according to his experience, what's the answer going to be? No, of course they can't. Bones never live again. If we answer according to our experience, the answer is going to be no, of course they can't. If he answers it according to his experience of God, who's just let him down bitterly, it's going to be, God, what do you care? Nah. But Ezekiel's wiser than that. He's humbler than that. And so in his humility, a humility that we'd all do well to learn from, he says, "Oh Lord God, you know." I don't know, Lord, but you do. It seems to me that the answer is no, but you know more than I. So if there's a different answer, I'm open to it, Lord. And in being open to that different answer and being open to new possibilities, God is able to speak to him, to present to him a vision. The way that Ezekiel approaches this is often called the beginner's mind. And what the beginner's mind is it's a mind that's open to possibility. See, as life goes on, as we become experts in living, as we experience more and more life, we think we know it all. We think we have other people figured out. We think we have situations figured out. We think we know what's coming. We think we know what's needed. And so we don't see very many possibilities. In a situation where there might be hundreds of possibilities before us, we only see a handful. And so to approach a situation with a beginner's mind is to approach it like the very first time. And in approaching it like the very first time is to approach a situation and to let infinite possibilities unfold before us. It's to dwell in the land of infinite possibility. We can think of how valuable cultivating the beginner's mind is. When we think about our relationships with people. We can think about how hard it is, for instance, to really see a person, someone who we love, a spouse, a child, a friend, how hard it is to see a person for who they really are. Because what do we most often see? What comes most naturally? Our thoughts about that person, our feelings about that person, our experience about that person. We don't approach them for who they really are. We approach them for who we think they are. And those two things are so different, and they're never fair to the person that is. And so to approach a person with the beginner's mind is to see them like the very first time, and is to give them the opportunity to really be for us who they are instead of who we think they are. and may have written them off accordingly. This actually happens in this morning's gospel. In this morning's gospel, Jesus comes to Mary and Martha. He's come with the purpose of raising Lazarus from the dead. But Mary and Martha are so full of their disappointment in Jesus. They're so full of their disillusionment with Jesus. You know, they're so upset that he wasn't here 2 days ago that they fail to appreciate the fact that he's here with them today. You know, they're so full of anger that he wasn't here 2 days ago, they fail to appreciate that he's standing there with them right now. And their minds are so caught up in the ways that he hasn't done what they want him to do that they're not open to the fact that he might be able to do something still. And so because they're all they see is their perceptions of Jesus, they miss the real Jesus that's standing before him and the act that real Jesus can do on their behalf. You see, that's the difference between the beginner's mind and the mind of an expert, the person who's already got things figured out. And so part of our challenge then is to cultivate that beginner's mind. This is what Ezekiel does. When Ezekiel does this, possibilities unfold before him. God speaks to him, shows him this vision. A great storm comes up in this valley. These bones that are strewn all over the place begin to come together. You've probably read this passage before. They begin to come together. Flesh comes upon these bones. God breathes the breath of life into these bones, and this whole host of people lives before Ezekiel again. It's a sacred moment. And Ezekiel enters into it fully. And it's important to appreciate this sacred moment for what it is. Because here's the simple truth, and this is true for all of us. This is true for you, and this is true for me. This is the great leveler in all our lives. And here's the truth. You, we only have moments to live. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you come from. I don't care how much you have. You only have moments to live. And I trust you catch the play on words. You might make it to be 150 years old. But if I do not enter into the moments before us, we have never truly lived. At the same time, we might only make it to a fraction of those years. But if we enter into the fullness of those moments, it just might be that even one moment lived fully is enough. And so Ezekiel receives this moment as a sacred moment. He enters into it fully. And I'd encourage you just for a moment, to think about this moment that you are in now, this moment that I am in now. And whatever it is that you brought in here with you this morning, whatever it is you're struggling with, and I know some of you are struggling with big things, but realize how good this moment is. You see, in this moment, whatever's going to happen a minute from now, whatever's going to happen tomorrow, you're alive. I'm alive. There's a lot to be said for that. In this moment, here now, we have a roof over our heads. We're sheltered from the elements. We're sitting here with full stomachs. We're not thirsty. We've had plenty to drink. We're not worried. We're able to express our religious freedom. We're not worried about people bombing us, tanks rolling in, people filling this room with chemical gases. So few people that have lived have ever had all those things to come together like they've come together for us right here, right now. But that's not all. We're surrounded by people who love us. We're surrounded by people who care about us. We're surrounded by people who would do anything for us. And even if you've come here alone, there are people here today who would do for you whatever it is you need if you just ask them, or if you just ask me and help me find a way to do that for you. And so you see, if we think about this moment, how full this moment is, how much goodness is in this moment, we begin to experience how good God is to us. And we begin to experience that moment anew. We receive it as the gift that it is. Receiving that gift as the gift that it is. Becoming mindful of God's goodness towards us in this moment, whatever might come, but in this moment here, enables us to redeem the other moments of our life. And this is also what Ezekiel does. He redeems these moments of despair for his brothers and sisters in Israel. They're in despair. The moments that they're living, they're moments of despair. They're moments where they feel like they're betrayed, they're disillusioned. These are moments of bitterness. And he's able to say that, and the reason they feel that way, they feel that way because they think they need something. They think they need to be back in Israel. And they think they need it so badly that they're willing to try and control things to get what they need. So they enter into idolatry, into idolatrous practices. But that only brings more grief and sorrow. And so Ezekiel says to them, right here where you are now, stop worrying about what it is you think you need. Just realize that God is present with you right here and right now. And even in this moment, life can still be good. Breath can come to the bones. The walking dead can become the waking dead. And he gives them hope. He gives them courage. And it seems to me that a great many of us, we have things that we think we need in life. We have places we think we need to be. And so we try to control everything to get to those places. And the simple truth is, nobody ever gets exactly the life they want. Nobody ever gets exactly the life they think they need. Things don't turn out for any of us exactly like we hoped would be. And so if what we're always thinking about is what we need, we fail to appreciate what we have. If all we're ever aware of is where we think we go, we fail to appreciate the beauty of where we are. And you put these two together and you get people who run so fast and run so hard, who are so busy, who are so consumed with worries about this or that, who are so thinking about some future tomorrow that they want to achieve, something that they need some other day, that they never pause and appreciate any moment for what it is, the fullness of the blessing in that moment, and so much of our life goes unlived. G.K. Chesterton says it this way, one of my favorite of all quotes. He says, "Here ends another day during which I have had eyes, ears, hands, and the great world around me. Tomorrow begins another day. Why am I allowed to?" You see, when we realize how good a moment is, whatever's going to come, whatever's gone before, whatever's going to come ahead, if we realize how good the moment is, we realize how good God is to us, and we begin to experience his presence with us wherever we are. And I think of this often. I think of this when I look at a flower. And you ever looked at a flower? I know you have. You look at a flower, and if I really look at a flower, if I just pause, I look at how beautiful a flower is. I think, oh my goodness gracious, I am so blessed that I get to see even a single flower. Why should I be allowed to? See, one's enough. And if I don't come to appreciate that, I'm always going to feel gypped. I'm always going to feel shortchanged. I'm always going to feel let down. I'm always going to feel disappointed. But if I can pet the cat, just feel how good it is, to see her side rise and fall, see her eyes roll back up in her head and her little tongue loll out as she, hear her purr. Just think, this moment. To be given one moment like this, why should I be allowed to? The season of Lent, we give up so many things, and where a lot of my diet consists simply of oatmeal. But I sit down and I eat a bite of oatmeal. You know how good oatmeal tastes? Do you know how filling oatmeal is? I sit in my warm house and eat my bite of oatmeal, and I think, this bite is so good. Why am I allowed to? And when we can enter into these moments, instead of always trying to run for that which we don't have, the goodness of those moments can begin to fill our lives and redeem those moments where we would otherwise experience despair, bitterness, anger, disillusionment. And then when that happens, we can take the next step as well, and this Ezekiel does also. And there's a line in this morning's reading that's so easy to miss, because it's this great dramatic story of skeletons coming to life again, the Walking Dead, years and years and years before there ever was a Walking Dead. I mean, I loved this story. This was a story that made me think the Bible was cool. But there's this line that that comes in at the end. And it's not just when the bones become upon bones, but God says, when you receive life again, I'm going to place you again on your own soil. What's he saying there? He's saying, I'll bring you home. I'll bring you home. Home is that place where we know we have a place. Home is that place where we're connected to something bigger than ourselves, so that when we ourselves no longer continue, that bigger thing we're connected to does. You know, it's a funny thing. When I grew up in Pittsburgh, I always knew I'd leave Pittsburgh. I always knew Pittsburgh would be a place that I was from. But as I've gotten older, and I know this is sort of corny, I know this is sort of wishy-washy, I know this is sort of emo, and maybe this is sort of old man stuff, and forgive me. But these days I long to go back to Pittsburgh. These days I long to go back to Western Pennsylvania. And when I do, sometimes I'll literally just kneel down and just put my hands in the soil. Because when I do that, I remember these are my people, rough as they are. These are my people. Yeah. And the day's coming, and it's not far off now, where I won't be anymore, but my people will still be here. And when I can sense that sense of connection to them, I can sense that connection to something that'll go on. Home is that place where we find a place. When we were in Israel, I had a great time in Israel. I don't know that I ever learned as much in 2 weeks as I learned when I was in Israel, and I love learning, so for me that was like being in heaven. But I was never so glad to come home as when I came home. And to sit at home in my little chair in the dining room with the cats right there in front of me, warm cup of tea, my wife over there with her cup of tea. See, that's my place. I haven't always known this. I haven't always appreciated this. But for me, it just doesn't matter what goes on out there. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Everything goes to hell in a handbasket. Doesn't matter how much I mess up. Doesn't matter how many people I disappoint. It does matter. But I have a place I can come to, and I know I am loved. And when you find that place, you see, you have your haven against the storm. And those sort of come together for me in this place, because you too are my people. And the day will come when I'm not here any longer, when I'm not in this world any longer, but you, my people, will still be here. We'll still go on. In some ways, you know better than anybody how I can disappoint you, how I can let you down, how I can fail to be the priest that we all wish I'd be. But you love me still. And so I long to come back here. When I was in Israel and I wasn't here on a Sunday morning, I missed being here because I missed being with you, because for me, this is home. And I love these moments together. These moments we create where we know our place, where we can love and be loved, and we know that we're part of something bigger than ourselves, something that will endure even when we do not. And that's what Ezekiel gives to his people. And that's what we want to create together, and what I would wish for you. All of us, every single one of us, we only have moments to live. May you receive the moments that are given as gifts and enter into them in all their fullness and realize how good life can be. Realizing that, may you experience God's presence and allow that to redeem the dark moments, the tough moments, the struggling moments of our lives. And then together, for each other and for all those people out there who haven't yet experienced it, may we create those moments where we know our place, where we know that we can love and be loved, and that we're a part of something that will endure. Where no matter what's going on in our life, we know that at least right here, right now, life is good. Amen? Amen.